at the time my dad went inside, my mum was obviously already in, so that wasn't any news. But my dad told me that he was going to London with his dad, so my granddad, to look at a car. And I remember revising for my GCSEs, just doing my thing because I had my exams coming up. And I remember texting my dad that day saying, can you pick up some notebooks? Because I'd ran out and I needed them to revise. And then I didn't hear anything back, but I didn't think anything of it because he was away in London, like he told me. And I just remember revising and my brother came in and I could immediately see the look on his face. And yeah, so he told us that my dad wasn't coming home. So that was obviously really tough. Because it was just a shock because they'd been so dishonest about the whole thing. And I realized that they probably were trying to do what they thought was right. But I also resent my dad quite a lot for putting that responsibility onto my brother to tell me and break that news to me. So one day I was there just revising for my exams, thinking my dad was coming back as usual, and he wasn't. And we didn't even say goodbye.
Hello and welcome to Life After Prison with Jules. Today's episode, we're talking about what it's like when your parent goes to prison. Something thousands of children go through but rarely talk about. We're joined today by Natasha Harris, who experienced this firsthand when both her parents went to prison when she was 15. She's here to share the impact it had on her life and why she's now speaking out. Also with us is Sarah Burrows, founder of Children Heard and Seen, a charity supporting children and families affected by parental imprisonment. Welcome to the couch, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today and coming on to share your knowledge, your experience. How are you feeling?
Nervous, but happy and excited to be here.
Good. I mean, it is a topic that we haven't dived in before, but I think it's so important that we do. And I'm so excited for you guys to be here today and share what you are going to share. And also that we're finally kind of, speaking out about this on this platform. So, so thank you. Can we start, Natasha, by you sharing a little bit about your story and who you are?
Okay. So, I'm Natasha. I'm 26. In terms of my story, when I was 14, my mum was sentenced. They were involved, both my parents were involved in years of white collar crime, part of quite a big gang of people. And yeah, when I was about 14, my mum went to prison. And then shortly after that, my dad also went to prison. They were both involved in the crime. And it was myself and my brother. He was 17, 18 at the time. And yeah, obviously it was a, very difficult experience. And it followed years of investigations and just general turbulence, really, in the family. But we're many years on now, and I'm so glad to be here to speak about it on this platform, especially. But yeah.
What was it like at 14 to have your mum go to prison and then your dad?
It was awful. It was really, really difficult when my mum went inside. So I think this is right, she went in on remand. So it was before she got convicted, because she knew that my dad was also going to go to prison. She tried to time it so she could go in first and then we wouldn't be alone for so long, which obviously we did end up on our own without both our parents there. But it was very difficult. At the time when my mum went to prison, she was our primary caregiver. So my parents had split up quite some time before. So when mum went inside, there was a lot of change because mum was gone. And then dad moved in. And to be honest, even though my mum went inside before, really both my parents left the day that my mum left, because my dad's capacity to be there for us, knowing what was coming, that he was also going to get convicted, he couldn't be present as a parent. So yeah, it was really tough. Yeah, very tough.
Were your parents present with you before you knew they were going to prison?
My mum definitely.
Did you know what was going on?
Not really. I don't know, it was strange. I remember growing up when they were in the midst of what they were doing and they were making a lot of money and, you know, I was a naive, innocent child. I didn't know what they were doing. I just saw my mum as like this businesswoman who was coming home with a lot of cash and we lived a nice lifestyle. And they were present. They were. I think my mum definitely more so than my dad. The relationship with my dad has never really been that strong. But even still, I think, yeah, she was present as much as she could be. But as well, with this going on, there were times where she obviously wasn't at home and that kind of stuff. But to be honest, it's taken me a lot of time to piece together what happened because my memory is so, like, some of it is missing really to what happened. And it was obviously such a long time ago, but I would say they were present as much as they could have been.
But you didn't know what was
I didn't know what was going on.
I mean,
no.
That's pretty hard at 14 and younger to actually, if an adult can hide that, it's quite hard for a child to really understand.
Yeah.
Especially as it was, you had a nice lifestyle, you had everything you needed.
Definitely,
I guess that must have been a real shock when you had none of that at 14 and that was all. What was that like? So you had everything and then was it one day it was kind of like gone, or could you sense something?
I think we could definitely sense things. I mean, when my mum went in, we dropped her off at Crown Court. So we were there and she told me that she was going away for 7 months, I think, which was obviously a lie because she was away for much longer than that. I think I could sense things going on because there were investigations, like we had raids and the police randomly at our door. I remember one day the police took us to school because my parents were busy with the police or had been arrested. I really can't even remember, but I remember being dropped off at school in a police car with my brother. And I got pulled out of primary school in year 4. I was privately educated, but when this was all happening, they couldn't, afford to continue paying the private school fees. So yeah, there were a lot of things going on, but still they weren't honest. So there was changes, but I still didn't really know what was going on. But I think when my dad also went inside, that was I think that was just insane because it was one day we were together and then literally the same day, my brother and I were just alone.
So how long did they go away for?
So about 3 years each. But my mum did it first. But there was a period of about 5, 6, 7 months of when we were just on our own. But yeah, they served they were sentenced for longer, but they served about 3 years each.
How was that time on your own? It was just you and your brother? Just
me and my brother. Really tough.
So young as well.
So young.
Were you scared?
Yeah, really scared. Very scared. Yeah, it was just a lot. It was a lot to process as well. So to even articulate how I felt, it feels difficult because there were so many different emotions. And I think the way that they went about it as well, at the time my dad went inside, my mum was obviously already in, so that wasn't any news. But my dad told me that he was going to London with his dad, so my granddad, to look at a car. And I remember revising for my GCSEs, just doing my thing because I had my exams coming up. And I remember texting my dad that day saying, can you pick up some notebooks? Because I'd run out and I needed them to revise. And then I didn't hear anything back, but I didn't think anything of it because he was away in London, like he told me. And I just remember revising and my brother came in and I could immediately see the look on his face. And yeah, so he told us that my dad wasn't coming home. So that was obviously really tough. Because it was just a shock because they'd been so dishonest about the whole thing. And I realised that they probably were trying to do what they thought was right. But I also resent my dad quite a lot for putting that responsibility onto my brother to tell me and break that news to me. So one day I was there just revising for my exams, thinking my dad was coming back as usual, and he wasn't. And we didn't even say goodbye. Like, I don't know what my dad was thinking, but he was just gone. And I think when it happened, I didn't really feel my emotions. I remember just like being a bit manic and I frantically cleaned the house and I don't know if I was trying to get some kind of sense of control. We also had 3 dogs and 2 cats at the time to look after. And it was great that we had them because they were like emotional support. But it was a lot. It was very, very difficult. And I remember after my brother told me, he, was 17, 18 at the time, and he just took himself into the kitchen, put his back against the door so I couldn't go in. I could just hear him cry. Yeah, it was sad.
Oh, I'm sorry, and I know you're getting a little bit emotional, so I just want to make sure you're all right. You're making me a bit emotional. Yeah. I mean, yeah, thank you for sharing that. I know it's super tough. Sarah, I wanted to ask you what kind of rights and support is there? What are the rights for children under 18 to actually be on their own, or what happens to children under 18 when parents do go to prison?
There is an assumption that when a parent goes to prison that the authorities know, and they don't always know because they're not alerted that a parent has gone into prison. So we have had a number of children living on their own, and for various reasons haven't wanted to say that they're living on their own. So people are always quite surprised to find that. We had a number of children, young people, sort of 15 upwards, living on their own, and some for quite a long time as well. There isn't a mechanism, a statutory mechanism that kicks in to, when a parent goes to prison, that most people are surprised about.
So what is the process when a parent goes to prison? How are the authorities alerted that there are children under 18 there?
They would be reliant on the parent going to prison in raising it, or saying to probation, and probation saying it is very much reliant on that. Thames Valley Police have started a pilot called Operation Paramount in terms of using their data and local authority data to try and identify. But it is a huge problem about children. So
there are children completely under the age of 18, just on their own while parents go to prison?
There could be. We don't know. So the government recently made an estimate of how many children had a parent in prison, but it's an estimate. They don't know who the children actually are. That is quite surprising, really.
Natasha, would you have wanted your parents to have told you what was going on?
I think, yeah. It's hard. It's hard to say. Yeah, probably, because I just think it just affected the trust. And after I realised what they were telling me or what they weren't telling me, I just failed to trust them after that. And it was hard to feel any sense of safety from them because you didn't know if they were being honest or not. So I think, yeah, perhaps just from that trust standpoint, yeah.
And at that time, apart from maybe your parents being open and honest with you, what kind of support do you think you needed then? And your brother?
Yeah, financial support, 100%. I don't even know how we got by in that period of time when we were alone. We did have, extended family members, supporters, we were renting. So I don't know. We struggled obviously financially throughout that time. So, but I think aside from the financial support though, just the emotional support, my school were unaware. And I think because there's the lack of infrastructure or system that helps identify a child who has a parent in prison, the responsibility is either put on the parent to make that happen or the child to ask for help. And I think it's just unrealistic to expect a child to ask for help because there's so much shame and guilt as well. Even accepting that your parents have done something wrong and they've made you feel a certain way, because they're your parents, it feels hard to even say that and point the finger because it's your mum and dad. But it was wrong. And we weren't supported in any capacity. So I think even just the school being aware would have made so much difference. But yeah, the responsibility was all on us to ask for help, and I didn't ever ask for help. I just didn't feel like I had the safety to do so. And even just accepting the situation, it's taken a lot of time to piece together what happened, and a lot of therapy to piece together what happened in certain points of this experience, because my brain has just blocked it out to some extent. But yeah, so much more should be done, particularly just within the school. I think that would have really helped, because we'd just sort of suffer in silence.
Well, yeah, for you to be able to go to school and do your normal kind of activity, it probably didn't feel normal life then.
No, definitely not.
And those kind of those emotions that you said, you know, shame, guilt, is that what you felt at that age when they went inside?
Yeah.
Were you feeling like that?
Yeah, definitely. I felt shame. I felt scared. And I think part of me probably didn't even want to accept the situation, because just to be 14, 15 and accept and sit with those feelings within yourself that your parents aren't there, that was too hard for me. And I remember I just started to do things that numbed those feelings, really, and made it easier for me. I had my GCSEs, which all went fine, and then it was summer, so it was just months of not doing anything and my parents not being there. So yeah, it was very challenging.
So at that time, at that age, when you say that you kind of, you know, you weren't really doing anything, or you were using, like, what road did it lead you down?
So at the time, you know, my brother was 18, and he was doing a lot of things I guess a lot of 18-year-olds do, and he'd have his friends around a lot, and they were smoking a lot of weed. And very quickly, I also started smoking. I was like, about 15, and I just remember particularly that summer just smoking weed, really, because it took the pain away. It just numbed those feelings, and yeah, it was just very lonely time. But I think both of us, I mean, my brother, he really isolated himself. Luckily, he still had his friends, and it was nice that his friends were present, because it kind of brought life to the house. But I just remember, you know, I also did see my friends, and we would smoke weed together, and we'd play games, and then all of a sudden, you know, they'd go home and it would be reality again, and we'd be on our own. Yeah. I
mean, you said lonely there, and I feel lonely hearing about that, you know, like such a young girl and men, you know what I mean, boys, like young, not having a role model around, or a parent. That must have been a super lonely time, and no guidance, you know.
That's it. Yeah, so isolating. And I think it's great that we're here raising awareness about this, because I think about my 14, 15-year-old self. If I had, you know, I was on social media, as most young kids are. If I had gone on to social media and seen someone speaking about their experience, even just that would have been so powerful in feeling less isolated, which is why, you know, I've wanted to support the amazing work at Children Heard and Seen, and wanted to be here today on this platform, because just speaking about it can have such a positive impact. Yeah.
It's very true. So thank you very much. Sarah, can we hear a little bit from you about your perspective and the work that you do? So you set up your charity in 2014. Why did you set it up, and why did you set it up?
Initially, I was in the youth offending service in Oxfordshire, and we had an amazing diversion scheme at the time that were diverting children out of the criminal justice system that were deemed as vulnerable. So if they were under social care, on child protection register, or child in need plan, or in care, or were going missing, or had witnessed domestic abuse. And we were able to divert them out, but it left a much smaller cohort of young people coming into the criminal justice system for the first time. And a significant amount of those had a parent in prison. So I thought, well, this is going to be quite easy to set it up as another vulnerable cohort, but it needs to sit under an organisation and couldn't find an organisation that supported children with a parent in prison in the community. There were very many organisations supporting in the prisons in terms of family visits, but not just focusing on in the community. So that was sort of back in 2011, and after I left the Youth Offending Service, it just stayed with me as an idea, and then decided in 2014 to set it up. And so initially it was very much about breaking the sort of cycle of what I saw of offending, but it hasn't become that. It's been everything that Natasha said. It's around their shame, stigma, and isolation for children, not just left on their own, but with one parent going, of how society and how they are treated and what they experience. So we sort of tailored our support, and it's grown and changed a lot. Initially was around mentoring and having role models to break the cycle of offending, but now much more it's about meeting others to reduce that shame, stigma and isolation. So, a massive group work programme, one-to-one support. So like Natasha saying, having that safe space to process the emotion. You still love your parent, but actually you can feel angry, upset, and it's providing a sort of safe environment to be able to have not short-term, in terms of sort of 6-week support or anything, but as long as that child and young person needs it to work through those emotions and feelings. And whether it's to actually then to be able to discuss that with the parent inside, or whether that actually is for them, it's so individual, but everybody experiences it differently. But that sort of secrecy, isolation, shame, it is common throughout, really.
So for people reaching out to your charity organisation, is it the parents that do that? Is it
It's mainly self-referral from the person caring for the child outside.
Okay.
And the focus is always on the child. The child is central to everything. Over half the children we support at the moment don't actually visit the prison. And a third don't actually have contact with the parent in prison. So it is very mixed, but it is about the child, and it's about their thoughts and their feelings.
Which you haven't seen been done before? Is that what you felt like was missing?
Yeah, absolutely missing. And
which feels like fundamental, right?
Yeah, but it was very strange, because when we first started in 2014, I was really naive and thought this would be quite easy. That they will, that you can, because at the time I was working for the local authority in social care, so I thought, well, it'd be quite easy. We'll be able to go and say, this is the service we're setting up, and we will start, children and families. But nobody knew who the children were. I was really surprised. So probation knew when obviously found had children when they were going to be released, but no one in terms of when they were going in. So there was a lot of going to, police, probation, putting up notices in the supermarkets, are you caring for a child with a parent in prison? Do you want to come along and meet others? And so that was in 2014. When the pandemic struck in 2020, we were only supporting 120 children. But still felt a lot, it felt like a lot of that we could lose it all, in terms of what's happened. So we put everybody online. We did a second-hand laptop appeal and got these 120 children online. But then families started referring themselves all over the country. So so for us, the pandemic was a good time, really, in terms of being children and families being able to come together. And in fact, we have a residential coming up. And we're expecting over 300 family members to come, and they're coming from all over the country. And it will just be, the focus won't be, the parent in prison, but everyone will know that their parent is in prison. So you can look at everyone and realise that you're as normal as everybody else. And it reduces that feeling of isolation, really.
And your charity has been recognised. Can you talk to us about some of the awards that you've won and been recognised for? The Prime Minister's Award?
Oh yeah, Points of Light. That was Points of Light. Points of Light Award. That was volunteering award that I received. I don't know when, quite a while ago. Yeah. There's been a few. There have been a few awards. Yeah, I'm not very good.
That's all right. What is the work that you do? What does that mean to you now?
I think it is about the proudest thing of the work is that it was in the Labour manifesto, that children should be identified and supported. I mean, it is such an invisible cohort of children. However, we are a year on, or more than a year on, and as yet, nothing has happened. To see the common themes of shame, stigma and isolation, to just see that it's just continuing, and there needs to be so much more done for children that, a parent in prison, so much more, really.
What other kind of emotions and themes, common themes, do you find that children experience when a parent goes to prison?
I think because every child is different and every family is different. So very many, but from what Natasha was saying, one of the things we do is a personalised crib sheet about how to tell the child that, the parent is in prison, sort of, at the appropriate age, in terms of offence type, but actually getting it right. Because obviously children are Googling offences and it's brutal, really. We have a number of groups, and the children in that group, everybody has had their parents' offence in the press, so their address has been in the in there. We've had more than half the children have witnessed the arrest. That's traumatic, in terms of itself and how they feel and the powerlessness. And there's so much work that needs to be done. There's so many children that need supporting.
It's a lot. It's and it's not talked about enough. And it's something that people don't really think about that much. I mean, people don't, unless you've got experience of prison and somebody going in, or a loved one, or you've gone in yourself. You don't really think about prison anyway, but when you think about this kind of stuff and how many children are being impacted by that, it's quite, it's surprising, isn't it? How missed they are.
But also society, how they make so many judgments, in terms of that this is a child that actually needs supporting.
And the stigma around prison anyway is heavy. That the child already thinks that, and then they've got to go through everything else as well. Sarah, what advice have you got for young people that are going through that now?
I think, as Natasha said, it's a bit about realising you're not on your own, and actually finding a trusted adult that you can talk your feelings through, because it is really important, because then, years down the line, the trauma is coming out. Whereas actually at the time, if you can talk about it and try and make sense of what is going on, and for the adults caring for them in terms of being honest with them, really. I think we have had children that have been supported by us, but didn't know initially that the parent was in prison, and actually wanting, thinking, well, if the parents lied about this, what else have they lied about? And adults actually getting in touch with us, saying that they've just realised now that their parent went to prison, and wondering. So I do think adults, in an age appropriate way, do need to be honest with the children, and also that being mindful that there's so much in the press, and that it is brutal, and that children need to be protected.
It's interesting because as a parent, you're probably thinking, absolutely not. I need to protect them by not telling them. And then hearing from both of you, it's the opposite.
Yeah. I think it's also hard because as someone going through that, as in being the adult that has gone to prison and having a family outside, there's no rule book on how you handle the situation. And even though my parents made several mistakes and I wish they had done things differently, I know now that they were just two adults processing their own trauma and their own events. They struggled so much to do that. How could they be present for me and help me process what I was going through? So I think, it's not just the support for children or young people, it's also advice for adults on how to navigate that situation, because there is no rule book. And they're just people trying to do the best. And sometimes that, doesn't work out.
Well, it's interesting you say that because, I was around a lot of adults in prison. Everyone was above 18 and I was the youngest, at 20. So I saw a lot of adults made a mistake and have kids at home. And I didn't even think about that kind of side of it. But it's really, it's inspiring that you think about both sides of it and how, you know, they've made a mistake.
Yeah.
They're dealing with, there's a lot of trauma that goes through going to prison, and then having to think about that as well. I mean, it would probably be easier if there was a rule book.
Definitely.
So, Natasha, how did you get involved with Children Heard and Seen?
So, about the start of the year or back end of last year, I've done a lot of volunteering with young people from undeserved backgrounds. I've always been quite passionate about helping people who perhaps have similar struggles. And I'm coming to an age where I'm like, what do I want to do with my life? You know, I want some direction in my career and things that really make me happy. And, you know, I'm obviously having lived experience in this space and knowing that there is no support for children who are impacted by imprisonment. I just started to do my own research to understand what can be done. You know, I've seen a need. I wasn't aware of Children Heard and Seen at this time, and I've seen a clear need, and I thought, well, how could I use my experience to fit into that and help others? So I just started doing a lot of research, and I came across this report written by a professor. He's called Professor Eddie Kane, and he did a piece of research with a consultancy firm, Crest Advisory, and they had looked specifically at the impact of imprisonment on a young child when their parent goes to prison. And I reached out to Eddie just to have an initial chat with him and just find out more about what the work that he'd done and what led him to create that report and his interest generally in the space. And we've stayed in touch, and he actually put me on a webinar where you and Felix from Children Heard and Seen were presenting. And then I reached out to you and Felix on LinkedIn, introduced myself, and before I knew it, you know, we had Parliament coming up and you invited me, which is amazing. We got to meet in person, and just to be in Parliament with Department for Education and Ministry of Justice in front of the right people, it was so powerful, and just probably the first time that I'd been around so many people that I could actually relate to. And now here we are. Obviously, we've stayed in touch. I continue to support Children Heard and Seen, and will continue to do so in the future, and generally just raise awareness. But that was how a lot of networking. I have a background in sales, so I'm very used to just contacting, just researching and finding people and just putting myself in front of them really when I want something or want to find something out. So yeah, and here we are.
Also presenting yourself and speaking, because you're very good at that. And that obviously comes with, you know, probably that sales background too, but being able to stand up in Parliament and talk about, what was it, your experiences?
Yeah,
what was that for?
It basically was a focus group where we just tried to advise on what the support should look like for children who have had a parent in prison. And there were several groups as well, weren't there? So yeah, it was just an open discussion really in the middle of Parliament around what that support should look like. And I met so many fantastic people that I continue to raise awareness for this. And I think it was just so powerful being in a room with, like I say, just people that you could really relate to for the first time ever. And I'm 26 now, and this happened to me, 10 plus years ago. But to be in that space with people who could really relate, that was amazing. And we're trying to build momentum to create change. So yeah.
So Natasha reached out. We've never gone out and said, "Did you have a parent in prison as an adult?" It's adults that actually are driven to want to create change. This is really interesting. And so there's 40 adults who have a parent in prison as a child, but want to really support and help. And because Department of Education and the Ministry of Justice are looking in terms of the Labour manifesto and their commitment to identify and support, we thought we just needed to take voices and go to Parliament and say, this is what, when we were a child, we wanted. And we ran 3 groups that day. So the first group was adults, and there was probably 20 adults that had, wide variety of backgrounds, from a superintendent in the police force, social worker, lawyer, incredible, absolutely incredible. So they, it was amazing, and everybody had that theme of they all had a parent in prison. And then we ran a group for adults looking after children with a parent in prison currently, about what they felt was really important, what was wanted. And then finally we had a group with children who currently now have a parent in prison and what's really important to them. So it was a really great, and from that, I mean, it was such it was quite a really, I mean, a great, this adult lived experience. It was great, loads of ideas flying around. And we have gone ahead to have a Children with a Parent in Prison National Day that will be on November the 25th. Wow. And that all came from this group saying, this is what, we shouldn't just be here. Because I think it was like an hour each session, wasn't it? And we were thinking, no, we need a whole day, but we need to have a collective voice and we need to get it out to the schools, and we're calling it Hear Me, See Me. And we're going to get, just to see giving children a voice. Children need a voice. You have a parent in prison. Wow. So it's going to be on the Tuesday.
Well done.
There's just so much power in community, and I think it's a national day, and there's plenty of national days for several things, but I think it's just raising that awareness. And whilst the government take however long to implement systemic change, I think there is so much power in just talking about it and that community sense, and we can at least do that whilst the government take however long to make decisions.
And what would you say to parents that are either in prison or have left prison?
Yeah.
What would you say to the parents that are wanting to keep a connection with their children?
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned trust before, and obviously that's probably going to be quite a strong theme. Mm-hmm. But what would you say to them if they want to stay connected and reach out and be with them?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult. I think accountability is just a really big part of it. I think just as hard as it is, and I can't even comprehend the trauma and the guilt that they must feel as parents, having put a child through that. But I think, at least for me, it all starts with accountability and acceptance. And that's one thing that my parents did not do. When my parents, I thought things would get better when they came home. But if anything, things got more challenging because they wanted to just brush it under the carpet. And we had so many complex, negative feelings, so much resentment towards them for what they'd done, that when they came home and didn't want to talk about it, it was like, how dare you put us through this? And then not even want to address it. And I know that's a reflection of their own capacity and not wanting to dive into something so painful for them, which is understandable. But I think as a parent, you have that duty of care, and it can also, no parent is perfect. And clearly, because you've gone through this experience, but I think it starts with that accountability and those difficult, honest conversations to really ask your child, how do you feel? How has this impacted you? And I think there's so much power in that. You can't change what happened, but I think relationships can really be protected, or at least, somewhat helped by taking that accountability and just facing what really happened rather than just ignoring it and expecting everyone to just crack on because that's what you want to do as the adult.
So when they came home, what was life like for you? How did it change? What happened after that?
It was like really hard. The relationships that we had were toxic and extremely dysfunctional. My mum came home first, and my mum, she saw the state in which we were living in, and she quickly turned things around. And I remember her going to probation, and she got a job and got herself a car and putting the pieces back together again. So practically I could see what she was doing, but actually emotionally things were so turbulent, and she didn't want to talk about what happened. And for me, I won't speak on behalf of my brother, but I know he would definitely relate. It's just, I had so much resentment towards her. And I don't know at the time, I don't know what I needed from her. I don't know what I needed. But I knew I needed to just be seen and listened to.
Do you know now what you needed?
For a long time, I thought that I needed my mum and my dad to say sorry. But as I've got older, I've realised that there's nothing that they can do or say that changes what's happened. I think it really, if they had taken accountability, which now they have, it's taken several years, the relationship with my mum is in such a stronger place now, which is great. And it's taken a lot of work, a lot of space, a lot of boundaries. But she's so supportive of me being here today, and she wants to listen to the episode, which is amazing.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's really lovely to hear.
I do think families need support around that, though, in terms of that.
Well, that sounds so difficult.
There is a romanticism of when they come out, what it's going to be like from the child. And I think from both, the child needs supported and the person that's coming out needs support in terms of everybody's had a traumatic time, but actually there needs to be much more mediative support on it, really, because it's not some happy ever after. There are the different feelings and the different emotions. But again, it's having time to process those emotions and feelings. And for adults not to put onto children that they're going to think this way or going to think that way and they're coming out, it's all going to be fine, to actually recognise what are they anxious about, what are they worried about. In the same way for the person coming out, what are they anxious about? They have missed key bits going on for the child, and the child is no longer the child that was, there, and those different, and there does need to be much more support around that, because there is very little support on that would really help families.
Well, what has helped you? And Sarah, maybe you can join in on this, on like tools or anything that you have found does help people. Let's start with what has helped you.
I think therapy for me was transformational, but I also recognise that therapy isn't accessible. It was privatised therapy, and I did try to get therapy through the NHS, but I wasn't much of a concern to dedicate those NHS resources to. So I'm very lucky that I've been able to access therapy. But outside of that, I think just having a supportive network around me, like my friends, have been so pivotal.
You just take as long as you need.
Just gets me talking about the support, because I don't think my friends realise how supportive they have been.
Well, your friends will definitely know now after listening to this. I'm sure they'll be listening as well.
Yeah, definitely. They've been so supportive. And I think just having that network around you, however big or small, but just a safe person that you can connect with, I think is so, so important. So if anyone is going through this, which obviously there definitely are, I hope that they have at least one safe person. And that can be a friend, it can be someone in school, it could be a teacher that you have a connection with, it could be anyone. But I think there's so much power in just being able to speak about what happened and process it and just have that support. As we're all human, we need that support.
And Sarah, you mentioned just before that, a lot more work needs to be done with the transition of parents coming out and for the children as well. What kind of support is already out there, and what else needs to be done?
There's so much that needs to be done, really. I think there needs to be much more of an awareness in schools as well, that teachers need to be able to be sensitive to a child and to be actually that safe person for them to come to, whether it's a safeguarding lead within the school, but it needs to be within the school, and to also create sort of safe spaces within the school, whether to have a peer support group in terms of particularly in large secondary schools, because there'll be a number of children and young people going through that, and actually it's the power of seeing others and actually having someone to talk about it, talk about what's happened and process that. I think that there does need to be so much more. Children are waiting a long time, in terms of finding to have support. We've had children that have been referred to us and their parents have been in prison for quite a number of years and not been able to access the support, and have witnessed quite traumatic things in terms of whether it's the arrest or the parent actually offending, and not being able to access support. There is a sort of misunderstanding, I think, that in some way social care might get involved and provide support. Now, obviously, many families don't want it, but some families would. But there is no support. It's the support we've only seen is for social care would be if the parent has committed a sex offence, and they'll tend to come into the house, check that the child hasn't been abused themselves, and then swoop out again, leaving everybody in the house absolutely reeling, and then going on, and the parent then serves a custodial sentence, prints their name in the paper, and then wait for the backlash of the community, whether it's a vigilantes breaking into the house or eggs on the window or, feces through the door, whatever, that what children are having to witness and experience without any, support around them.
So how do you feel like what do you think the process is to, help children and find children that are, on their own?
I think with the Thames Valley Police and violence reduction having had the data and shown in the Thames Valley a way for doing it, that this data could be used, but I think it needs to go into the schools, then it going with the police.
You think that's kind of like the first step?
I do think it's the first step in terms of domestic abuse. If the police had done a call out in terms of domestic abuse, the school would know. But there was a lot of training beforehand, so they were sympathetic and sensitive to that. But I do think schools, because there are so many children, that actually these children really, really do need supporting and not feeling isolated. Some might not want support, some might not want to talk about it, but they should be, that should be offered, but in a safe environment. Even if it was to say, I hear your parents gone to prison, I'm here if you want to talk about it, and nothing else. But actually to know there's somebody.
Yeah, that's really, really shocking, because you would think that was the process and they would automatically know. And I think most people that haven't heard this conversation or don't really know about it would assume schools know and have that chat with them.
Yeah, and they don't. And interestingly, a few weeks ago, a deputy head of a really large secondary school emailed and said, how will I know if I've got pupils in the school that have a parent in prison? It's like, well, you'll know if they tell you, but otherwise you won't know. And he couldn't believe it, having working, no, that they don't know. And that would reduce the isolation, definitely, definitely for children, having that person.
Yeah, that is crazy. That's sad, isn't it? That's really, really sad. I think that's made a lot of people aware right now of that. I wanted to ask you both what kind of message that you want to put out there for families, professionals, and to society in general.
I think that children with a parent in prison have a voice, and I think that society needs to see that they haven't done anything wrong, and actually they need to have a voice. They need to be heard. They need to be listened to, and everybody's experience is different. But actually, they need to be heard. They really do need to be heard, and let children speak and hear them.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, just echo that. I think it's easy to just focus on the person that has obviously gone inside, because that's traumatic in itself, but just to not be ignorant to the effects and the consequences that it would have on the wider family, and just be open-minded to that. And I think as a society, we're not aware. We're just not aware. We don't think about that, which I think is somewhat quite natural. But to be, non-judgmental and open-minded. And I think it's shocking as well that society judges you, but also judgment within your own family. Like, I have quite a big family, and I'm not close with many members of my family because of what my parents had done. So I think don't judge the child for the actions of their parents, and also people make mistakes. But yeah, I just think give them the space to be honest and speak their truth, even if it's painful. But I think there's just so much power in accepting that and being able to speak your truth.
Well, thank you to you both. And that's something that people can do straight away. Right now is the non-judgment thing. And it's a recurring theme on Life After Prison, I
can imagine.
And of course, we've mentioned your charity, Children Heard and Seen. We're going to put all of the details of your charity in our show notes. I kind of wanted to ask your, opinion on other organisations out there, or what kind of support and help is out there right now, and what people can be doing.
There's so little support for children with a parent in prison in their community. There's obviously the organisations that support in terms of families and the families visiting, PACT and POPs, but there is very, very little community support out there. And I do think it shouldn't be charities. It needs to be coming through in terms of with the schools. So I would suggest that people ask their friends and family, what do you think happens when a parent goes to prison, and start writing to your MP. And the government have made a commitment in their manifesto to identify and support children. What's happening? Let's together collectively, everybody can change that.
Thank you for sharing that. So on our socials, we like to get our audience involved, and we asked them a question. And our question to them this week was, what makes you feel supported? And we've had some really lovely answers, and some answers that resonate with what we've spoken about today. Somebody said community, and I think community is definitely such a massive part of being supported and building something. What we're doing on Life After Prison, it's really trying to build that community. And I think, you know, what you guys are trying to do today and what we're speaking about is really trying to build that community now. And I think that's really powerful. Somebody else said family and friends, which is definitely something you felt today and something I feel. And somebody else also said, my loved ones always turning up for me. And I think that's so special, especially in times where it is really tough. We do rely on our family and friends. So thank you to everybody getting involved. Please keep getting involved with us. And yeah, when we fire out a question on our socials, just, feel free to chime in at any time. You can get in touch with us on Instagram and X, which is @AfterPrisonPod. TikTok is Life After Prison Pod. You can email us at podcasts@prison.radio. And if you're inside listening, we will put the number at the end of our show, which you can contact us on. So Natasha and Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing everything you did.
Thank you.
For having us.
And to you all for listening. We'll see you next time.